Rolling?
Ja.
Sehr schön. Well, great to have you on the show. Really appreciate that. And first off, belated compliments for that new record of yours. Very atmospheric and very elegant.
Thank you.
And it went to number 3 in 14 different countries in the world. How did you feel about that?
Went to number 3.
Under the top 3.
In the top 3, yeah, that was good. It was interesting because it was the first record we've put out by ourselves without a formal record company. We left mute.
Right.
For this record. And that was, it was kind of interesting to watch how it worked, really. To do it ourselves and to see what could be done in that way.
Yeah, we're coming back to that later. As I said, we have to start right in the beginning when you were still a child. Your father was a literature teacher, and I understand that he read Shakespeare to you at a very young age.
Well,
was it that you would rather have heard some fairy tales like every other kid back then?
well, first of all, he didn't read Shakespeare to me when I was like 3.
Okay.
The kind of the mythology around some of these stories is an ever expanding thing. I don't even think he ever did read Shakespeare to me. He suggested at one point, I was reading when I was 12 or something like that, some murder mystery kind of cheap murder crime novel. And he said to me, if you want to read something that's really bloody, read Titus Andronicus. So he made suggestions like that. He did not sit me down and tie me to a chair and make me listen, and read Shakespeare to me.
That's nice of him.
Yeah.
Now, growing up as a middle child, you had a sister. She was 2 years older than you, right?
2 years younger.
2 years younger.
Yeah.
And now, being like, you often say that middle childs have to fight for attention if you have siblings coming before you and after you. Was it like that for you in your childhood?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. I can't really remember my childhood very well. I'm not sure why that is, but I remember it being, that I had a happy time, and I remember living in the country and the freedom of living in a small town in the country in Australia. But there are photographs of me from that time where I seem to be a kind of demonstrative, attention-seeking child.
What was the thing you like to do most as a child? Like just playing around, playing?
Torment my sister.
Usual kind of stuff?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I still like to do that, actually.
So at one point you were expelled from school, right?
Well, I was. I thought I was. My mother has since told me that that's not true. The thing was that both my parents worked at the school that I went to in this small town. My mother was the librarian, my father was the English teacher. And I was a lively child, I would say, and any mischief I got into, they were told about immediately because they worked there. So they were kind of besieged by all this sort of this bad shit that used to go on with me, and at some point something happened at the school that I got into quite a lot of trouble for, which I don't really need to go into, but it was just a childhood kind of thing. And the next thing I knew, I was kind of on the train going to Melbourne, to the city, to go to a boarding school there. So I always felt that I'd been kind of, sent away. My mother My mother sees it in a different way, that she felt that she was trying to protect me from this school and you know, which you know, that I could do better elsewhere. That's the way she sort of sees it. So I'm not sure whether I was expelled or not, really.
Then when came the point when you decided that you wanted to be in a band and play music?
Well, strangely, there was never a point of that. It was there was a band that was formed at school, which went on to be basically the birthday party, and everyone played instruments, but I hadn't learnt an instrument. So, and I was part of this kind of gang of kids, and so I ended up having the job as a singer, which it was kind of, you know, which I had not that particular interest in being, to be honest. My interests were elsewhere, you know. I wanted to, what I really wanted to do was to be a painter. And, you know, I studied art a lot. It was the one thing I was really interested in at school. And I knew, you know, I was very good at art history and all of that sort of stuff. And I was an okay painter at school. You know, I wasn't great or anything, but I was okay. And the band thing was very much something that happened on the side, you know. It didn't feel that important to me, you know. It didn't feel like something I always wanted to do.
Did you actually have a really religious upbringing?
No. No.
So that was nothing that your parents, I mean, growing up as an Anglican church member, they didn't force you to go to church or anything?
No, I was in the church choir. So I had to go to church twice a week. But to say I had a religious upbringing would not be true, because neither of my parents were particularly religious.
Right.
We lived in a town that was small enough that people felt compelled to go to church because it was a social thing, and you know, you just went to church. You know, as soon as my parents came and moved to Melbourne, the year after I was sent there, no one ever went to church again. Okay. You know? So they were in no way religious, but church was kind of a social need in the community, you know, to be seen at church.
Right. Now, having the band in the beginning, you mainly covered songs by other artists, right? Like Bowie, Lou Reed.
Yeah.
Who were these guys, and why were you fascinated by somebody like Bowie, for instance?
Well, really, the artist that we covered the most, with the most dedication, and whose songs took up about 75% of our rather small set, was Alex Harvey from the Alex Harvey Band. Do you know?
Yeah, Faith Healer?
Exactly. We used to play that. We used to play like in our set about 7 or 8 Alex Harvey Band songs, a couple of Alice Cooper songs. This is, you know, back when we had a school band, you know. We could kind of handle them. Bowie and stuff like that was a little out of our league, especially vocally. I couldn't sing that stuff. I could kind of sing an Alex Harvey Band song because it had a kind of linear, bluesy sort of feel. But.
Right. And when did you start writing your own songs then?
Oh, I don't know. Sometime in there.
Can you remember how you liked them? Were you like satisfied with how they came out?
You know, I mean, the first few years, even the first few records, was so. What they were was just the sum of our influences. You know, I can look at every song and say, well, this song was an attempt at being this person's song, or this song, or that song. So there was never any kind of real identity behind those songs. And it wasn't until quite late, I feel, in the procedure, within the birthday party, because the first record we put out was, we were called The Boys Next Door. It wasn't till you know, I think at least one record into the birthday party that we finally found something that was unique, that we found a voice as a band, that I found some kind of voice as a songwriter. Anything before that was, I don't really like to think about.
Now, speaking about idols of yours, have you ever actually met Bowie?
No.
But you
Have
met...
you?
Yes, I did. He's great, of course.
Yeah.
And
no, I never met Bowie. No.
But you met Bob Dylan. Briefly.
Met Bob Dylan, yeah.
Do you remember that moment at Glastonbury?
You want me to tell you it?
Yeah, because I've just seen this picture, and I wouldn't have recognized him. You can just tell by the nose.
You don't need to see that much more of Bob Dylan to know who it is, to be honest. But I mean, he had a hoodie on and a little. Maybe it was just someone who wasn't Bob Dylan with a plastic nose on or something. No, but I mean, he came up and told me that he liked what I did. So that was a very exciting thing, you know, because I idolized, especially at that time, idolized Bob Dylan, you know, and so that was, yeah.
Did you say anything to him?
Not really.
I
told him I liked what he did as well. And then to be honest, I couldn't think of what else to say to the guy.
Mm-hmm. What was it like with Johnny?
He caught me off guard.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
Were you better prepared when meeting Johnny Cash?
I had to sing it, you know. I mean, meeting Bob Dylan was just a thing that happened in 2 seconds. But I actually had to sing a song with I was asked to sing a song with Johnny Cash, so that was a different thing. And I, you know, Johnny Cash had featured large in my life from when I was a young kid, because when we go back to when I lived in a country town in Wangaratta, I used to sit with my parents and watch the Johnny Cash show. I don't know if you had that in Germany, but it was his own show, and he'd have different people come on, and he dressed all in black, and he was this kind of outlaw musician type that as a 12-year-old watching that in a country town in Australia, I was very much taken with this guy. And excited by this character, because I hadn't seen anyone like that at that stage that kind of showed that music could be something that was uncomfortable and evil, you know, something like that. So when I actually did do a song with Johnny Cash, whenever it was, 10 years ago, or whenever it was, I don't know when it was. It was quite a huge thing, you know. And he was amazing, a very generous, exciting kind of guy to be around.
Like, what was it like for you hearing his voice in the studio for the first time?
Well, I was concerned whether I would be able to sing. You know, I have great misgivings, or I don't so much these days, but I used to have great misgivings about my voice. You know, that it sort of functioned in some kind of way to do the stuff that I wanted to do, but taken outside of that, and I always felt very, you know, on some level intimidated by other singers, especially ones with great voices like Johnny Cash had, a particular voice. So I was quite frightened, actually, of singing with him, that how my voice was going to work with his voice. But in the end, we just did a take. We did 2 takes, I think, and it sounded great, you know.
And then, how did you feel about him covering the Mercy Seat?
Well, that was. I was basically on holiday in France, and no one It was a strange, no one knew where I was. I was just disappeared on holiday. And I got this phone call there in this house that I was in from Rick Rubin, who's the producer of those Johnny Cash records. And he's just like, hey, do you mind if Johnny Cash... And I'm like, how'd you get my number? And he's like, don't worry about that. Do you mind if Johnny Cash, he's in the studio, wants to record The Mercy Seat. Have you got any problems with that? And I'm like, let a half a minute's silence go down the phone. I went, no, I'm all right about that. but so that was very, very exciting. And not only that, but he did a great job on that, It's a great version of that song. So.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Yeah.
Now let's talk about your move to London from Australia. When you decided to go there, what was like the main reason to leave Australia in the first place?
Oh, everyone wants to leave Australia. We're raised to think that culturally everything happens elsewhere. Australia has no inherent culture amongst its white inhabitants.
Mm-hmm.
And everything that we would just look to England, and we would look to America and see, and that's where all of our stuff came from. So anyone having any kind of interest in art or music or whatever left Australia. That's what you had to do. Most people came back. Most people would go to England and last 6 months and then kind of come running back to Australia because it's so hideous over there. But we didn't. We stuck it out, and So it was, there was a lot of reasons, but there was no real life for anyone who had any kind of ambitions to being something other than just a little Australian group to stay in Australia.
And getting to London, was it like anything like you expected it to be there?
Well, I think we expected it to be much more culturally interesting in London, because we'd get the NME and all of this sort of stuff, and in Australia, and go, wow, like all of this sort of stuff. But in as far as music went, it was whatever was going on in whatever that had been going on in the UK with punk and all of that sort of stuff had finished. So we kind of came over to the UK when there was a kind of lull, a sort of deadness, I think, and hated what we were hearing, hated the place, hated the kind of weather, the fact that we had no money. We didn't have money in Australia either, but you can live without having money quite, happily in Australia. In London, it's quite difficult to live there with no money. I guess we were disappointed, angry, disenchanted.
Did you have the feeling that you were...
For a while.
What? Did you have the feeling that you were not taken seriously, also musically, like in the London scene? Oh, it's
I can hear him running up and down the stairs. Usually it's all right here.
Blue one.
Yeah?
Blue case.
Yeah?
You got any fags? No. It's just nice to know they're there.
I got the sound from the bathroom.
Oh, have you got Samsung?
I know in Hawaii they don't sell gold.
So we'll just have to sign the line.
I'll have to go and buy you a packet that you can keep, sort of.
Still rolling?
Yeah, it's okay. It's okay.
Everyone happy? Yes, thank you. Thank you.
So, I can't remember what we were talking about.
Yeah, if you had the feeling that the band was not taken seriously on a musical level in London.
Well, we had quite quickly got a small audience that kind of liked what we did. You know, but we were kind of making a sort of music that I think, because we were Australian, was misunderstood. People didn't understand, I think, that we could have a mixture of both contemporary and very much references from way back in the past within our music, and come from Australia at the same time. But we did all right. We did all right. We just didn't get a lot of work. We didn't get as much work as to sustain our lifestyle.
And on a personal level, did drugs play a role at that time already?
Yeah. Well, they always did.
When was the first time they started to play a role in your life?
Drugs?
Yeah.
Oh, I don't know. When did they first start taking a role in your life?
31.
31?
Yeah, I was a
No,
late
okay,
bloomer.
you're a late bloomer. I don't know. Maybe 14, something like that.
Uh-huh.
But things were well established in Australia, I would say, in that regard.
Mm-hmm.
In that regard, and they kind of slowed down a bit in London at that point because we just didn't have the money to sustain a healthy interest in drugs. We just didn't have the money.
Mm-hmm.
When we had the money, of course, but we just didn't have the money. So the problem, because we were, by that stage, we were heroin. I was a heroin addict, and other members in the group were. It's a very difficult thing to sustain an addiction in that sort of thing, because it's okay if you got money all the time, because you can just take your drugs every day and you can have a habit and you can sustain the habit and everything moves along quite nicely. But if you don't have the money, what's going on is that you're taking the drugs one day and then you don't have it the next day, and then for 3 days you don't have it, and then you have it for a couple of... And so you're thrown into a kind of terrible, debilitating cycle of being stoned and then being sick. Mm-hmm. You know, so one day you can do anything, and then the next day you can do nothing. And this is very difficult sort of position to be in, and really that's the enemy of the common street junkie, is that they don't have the money to sustain their habit properly. You know, if drugs were legalized, let's say, and they could go and get the stuff from the doctor or whatever, they could lead a life that was that was habitual, and they did what they did every day, and that's cool. But unfortunately, they can't do that, and so the consequence of that is that there's a lot of criminal activity that goes on, and desperation, and pain, and that sort of thing. So, but so that's kind of what it was like initially in London, you know.
Looking back at your career, do you think that drugs were ever necessary in terms of creativity for you?
Look, maybe, I don't know. It's difficult to say. I mean, they probably opened up some doors. Maybe they opened up some doors should never have been opened up, or that they're never really closed again. I don't know. they certainly put you outside of society, especially heroin use, you know. Other recreational drugs, everyone does that, but there's something about being a junkie that sets you apart from society, and that has a huge influence on the way that you go about your art, you know, because you are marginalised. People are afraid of you. People, especially in London when we arrived, the idea of a heroin addict was seen as really the bottom of the ladder. You know, you were right down the bottom of society with paedophiles and, you know, all the rest of the junk of society. You kind of lived down there. In Australia, actually, it's not like that because Australia's quite near Asia. The heroin comes over to Australia. It's very cheap, so it's quite a common recreational drug in Australia. Like a lot of people use it. So when we came over to London and we're using heroin, people were like, wow, you know, that's kind of heavy and get away from me type of thing. And the birthday party became known as a kind of junkie band, you know. So and that label was, you know, people stayed away from us, like record companies stayed away from us. And I think that had more that marginalised us more than our actual music did, if you understand what I mean. Plus we did these performances that were very, you know, aggressive, violent sort of performances. That didn't help either.
So I presume stop taking drugs they had a decision to be made, like a conscious decision to end it. Was it hard?
I mean, I only stopped taking drugs because they stopped working, you know. They stopped having the effect, the desired effect. You know, they just, I guess I became kind of, I don't know, saturated. And when you kind of take it, it doesn't do what it's supposed to do, which is to kind of cocoon you and make everything all right and comforting and like sucking on your mother's breast or something like that. It no longer has that effect. It makes you ill and sad and creatively bankrupt as well. So I just had I basically had to give up or just plough on until I was dead, really. And both of those things are options. But for me, I really felt an enormous amount from what I did, value from what I did creatively. You know, it was really important to me. It always was really important to me. So, you know, I had that thing. I had that other thing. And I worked, you know, even when I was using very heavily, I still worked. I still sat down and wrote, and I still played the piano all the time, and I still wrote things and worked, you know. But anyway, eventually, I guess the drugs just got in the way of that, you know. So I had to stop, really.
So we're making this jump from London to Berlin now, where the birthday party was over and you eventually formed the Bad Seeds. Around that time, why did you think was it necessary to like form a new band, to have something completely new?
Well, because the birthday party broke up. I don't think I was in a position back then to make any decisions about anything. So I just kind of went along with whatever was going on at the time. And the birthday party seemed fine. I mean, it wasn't in very good shape. The concerts were getting... we'd started to sort of reject the concept, the initial kind of in-your-face, aggressive kind of concept of the birthday party, because we just had all these people coming along who were kind of there to fight, you know. So we started to react in some way against that and kind of turn our backs and kind of look inward within the band. And so the shows weren't that interesting, you know. Mm-hmm. But anyway, and there was some sort of friction in the band as well. But Mick Harvey rang me one day and said, look, I think the birthday party should split up. And I'm like, oh, yeah, all right, whatever. And so that was it for me as far as music went. I went back to Melbourne, and thought about other things, drifted around a bit. And then I met Mick again, and he said, don't you think you should start up another band? And I thought about that and did, you know. So he was very important, really, in keeping that aspect of thing alive, you know, Mick, initially.
And being in Berlin, I understand that you were very fast, like integrated in the art scene there. Was it different than like compared to London?
Well, we were very, like I said, very isolated in London. Mm-hmm. We had a few musical friends, like the Fall. We were good friends with the Fall. We were friends with the pop group, and these to me were great. They were great English bands, and they were the kind of particularly at that time, they were the kind of saviors of the music scene because there was so much shit that was happening at that time. Terrible, boring kind of stuff, and they really did some exciting kind of shows, and Mark Smith's lyric writing was just incredible, and so they had a huge impact. But when we came over to, but we weren't involved in a scene. We weren't involved. We just knew them, you know. When we came over to Berlin, suddenly we just met all these incredible people, you know, really interesting.
Like who?
Christoph Dreher became a very good friend from Die Hout, and Tommy, all of Die Hout actually. Neubauten, we became very good friends with them very quickly. And there was at that time a genuine scene going on, you know, and it was just the right time for me to be sort of welcomed into a kind of society, an artistic society. Was fantastic, you know, because we'd become very jaded and unhappy with the whole thing. So it was this amazing thing, really.
And what attracted you about the city itself, West Berlin?
You know, there was a lot about. Obviously, it was kind of locked up, this place, and a lot of different sort of people came there. And I think that for me, it was the people really that made it such a, and you know, the bars and all of that sort of stuff. I think we kind of learnt a lot from the different people. Gudrun Gut. You know, there were just people working there that seemed to be working outside of the mainstream world, even the non-mainstream world. They were working in a kind of experimentally with stuff, and it was really exciting. You know? It was a total. My mind was kind of blown when I went into saw how Neubauten recorded a record, for example. I couldn't believe it. what they were doing, these guys, you know. And Neubauten for me were always a band that, even though they were experimental, there was something incredibly kind of likable about what they did, and something that you really felt something in your heart about what they did musically. There was soul inside of their music. You know, that I thought was really, really special. It was an amazing place.
Were you actually still dating Anita Lane back then?
Oh, maybe. We had a pretty free,
Yeah, that's what I thought.
free relationship, I would say.
How big was her influence on you musically and on a personal level?
At that time, huge. She was much better. She had much more raw talent, I think, than any of us did. She was a better drawer, better painter. She had a beautiful line with her drawings. She was an amazing painter, a great lyric writer. She wrote a song with Blixa Bargeld called Stranger Than Kindness, which we still perform, mostly because it's such a beautifully obscure, delicate, strange lyric that every time I kind of, and I assume that it's about me because we were dating at the time. It's one of those wonderful lyrics that can kind of reveal more and more every time you sort of sing it. So, but she was a great lyric writer. But what Anita didn't have that I had was the way of making a basic idea into something.
Okay.
You know, I've always. There seems to be kind of these sort of three parts to the creative process. There's the not knowing, and then the sudden knowing of what to do, and then the doing of it. And Anita was great at that middle thing, the kind of epiphany of why don't you do this and why don't you do that? But the actual implementing that thing and doing something with it, she was woeful at. So she was a great ideas person, and so together we were a really good team in that respect. But she always, back then, I mean, lyric writing is a different thing to me now, but back then she took the kind of fairly ordinary lyrics that I was writing and just shifted them into a place that was quite special. You know. I mean, she, in a way, she taught me how to write lyrics, I would say.
Was that like the basis for writing a novel eventually? And the Angel was around 88, I believe.
Yeah, something like that. It was took a couple of years in Berlin. I wrote that.
Where were you living exactly around that time?
Where was I living in Berlin?
Yeah.
I wrote a lot of And the Ass or the Angel in Elizabeth Recker's house in, I can't remember.
Elizabeth Recker's house. Kreuzberg, Schöneberg?
Maybe Schöneberg. Yeah, I can't remember. Yeah, but anyway, I wrote a lot of it there. I wrote a lot of it at Christoph Dreyer's place in Kreuzberg. But Elizabeth, she went through it was quite difficult. To have me in the house writing that book was it's not always a pleasant thing, and she put up with quite a lot for the writing of that book, I would say, and. Yeah. So, thank you.
Okay, stop talking about Berlin now. But we have to make a bigger jump right now, straight on to Murder Ballads, which was, I don't know if you can say that, but some kind of commercial breakthrough for In the Cave in the Bad Seeds. In retrospect, how do you look at that record when it came out and how it performed?
How do I look at that period?
Period and that particular record.
Well, you know, what separates that record from the others is that we did one of the songs with Kylie Minogue, and she'd been someone that I'd been interested in for a long time. I mean, interested in the sense that I watched her on the TV and go, oh, I like her. Mm-hmm. You know, there was something about her that I kind of liked, and I sent her this song, and she was quite happy to sing it. I'm not sure her management was that happy about that, but she went ahead and did it anyway. And, you know, and we had a hit record because, obviously, because it was with Kylie Minogue, you know. So, that was great, you know. It was great to, you know, have her in my kind of orbit for a short period of time. You know, I mean, we're still very good friends. But it was just there was something deliciously kind of perverse about the whole thing, about what happened. I mean, the song to me was as serious song as any other song that I'd done. But what happened around it, top of the pops, 2 weeks running and all of that sort of stuff, there was something that was, yeah, perversely nice about the whole thing.
Did it feel awkward to you in a way? Being on top of the pops and being a chart-breaking musician?
I don't know if it felt awkward, but it felt a bit weird, yeah.
Do you still have that bag, Kylie Minogue bag?
I think it's in a museum, actually.
Did you get any kind of feedback from her regarding the death of Bunny Munro?
She didn't read it. I talked to her recently about it, and because it's quite possible it's being made into a movie, and I think we need to get the rights to spinning around the song that featured heavily in the book.
Yeah.
But she hadn't read it.
Did Avril
which I'm quite happy about. I mean, actually, Kylie comes through it quite well. Avril Lavigne, I don't know if she read it or not.
Thing, yeah. Speaking about movies, when you take on projects like writing a film script, I'm always fascinated with how much discipline you do your work anyway. Is it hard for you to say no if somebody suggests something to you?
It used to be. It's not so. I'm becoming more practiced at it. I've had to become more practiced at it. But a lot of those kind of extracurricular kind of things like film writing and all of that sort of stuff, I was interested in because I'd never done it before. And I was just sort of asked, hey, could you write a film script? And I'm like, oh, I'll give it a go. And so that was, in some way, writing the proposition, the first film script I wrote, was really exciting, you know, because I love movies, and I could kind of sit there and write this script. I could write anything I like, and the characters could do whatever they liked, and it was just this wonderful way of telling a story, you know, which I've kind of always done. But now I've written a few, the kind of sheen has sort of disappeared off the whole thing a lot. And I've ended up becoming a script writer, like a proper script writer, which gets sent books every 2 weeks, and, you know, like a Hollywood script writer. And I'm not really interested in doing that. I've never really been interested in doing that. So some of these things that I've got involved in, they don't last, you know. It's not really what I want to be doing.
And how about writing soundtracks like the one you did with Warren?
I've done a lot with Warren.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I'll work in any way with Warren. It's always a pleasure and always an inspiration, an inspirational thing, just to work with him on anything. He's amazing.
And acting, is that a goal you could have?
No.
At all?
No. No, I'm not interested in doing that. I never have been, to be honest.
Now, speaking about Warren, it seems that the chemistry in the band is fantastic, just by looking at the stuff you filmed in the studio. Was it really like that when recording the record? Like all these guys packed into one house?
Yeah, this last record?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we checked into a... Well, checked in, that sounds like rehab or something like that. No, we went to it wasn't unlike rehab, this place, but it was a residential studio. So we all had to live together for 3 weeks and record a record, which in the past may have been an absolute recipe for disaster. God knows what would have happened, depending on the record. But and I didn't, it was a gamble really, because I didn't know how. I hadn't been with the Bad Seeds as a band for some years, and so I didn't really know how it was going to work. But at the same time, it felt like something different, to do, and something that would be quite intense. And it turned out beautifully, We actually recorded that record in the first week. And then just sort of hung around the next couple of weeks. The studio is so beautiful. It was in the south of France, and it was in an old farmhouse or something like that. It was unlike most studios, an absolute pleasure to be in. So we just sort of hung around, made a record very quickly.
And it's so beautiful. I mean, Warren, to me, I've seen you play this show in Berlin, and he's so much into that stuff he's creating. He's like an alchemist almost.
Yeah. Yeah, he is, and like an alchemist, it's a sort of esoteric, secretive kind of thing that he gets up to. So he's actually quite difficult to pin down about. Okay, what is that? What sound are you playing? There's sort of stuff that he doesn't know, or he's disinclined to talk about. Mm-hmm. But the great thing about working with Warren is that you'll just be sitting there at the piano, and then he'll press something, and this kind of sound will come out. Mm-hmm. But it's not your usual sort of loop stuff that you hear. There's something inherent in the sound that is instantly atmospheric. Like it instantly suggests all sorts of things, lyrically, musically, and it's just there. And I think the reason why his loops and stuff are so they're so soulful in a way, is because they're generally done on acoustic instruments. They're not done electronically. Mm-hmm. Some are, but mostly they're done on acoustic instruments. So there's a lot of kind of wood and wire and all of this sort of stuff involved in the actual creation of these loops. That is really unique. So anyway. It's great to work with the guy.
With regard to him and the rest of the guys in the band, are you, in general, an easy person to work with?
Me?
Yeah.
Look, at the moment, or in the past, I don't know.
Both, maybe?
I don't know. I'm impatient. I'm impatient, and I think over the years people have gotten used to that. So the people around me, when they are recording, know they have to be recording all the time. No one counts in a song and says, okay, turn, okay, are you ready? There's none of that. it's very much an organic thing in the studio where you sit and you start playing something, and that has to be, someone has to know what you're doing and to record that. So people understand that about the way, the process of recording the bad seeds. It's not done in a conventional way. And they know that very often it's the first takes that are the ones that we want and the ones that we keep. They're the takes that people don't even know what the song is or don't even really know how it goes properly. It's that stuff that we usually keep. And if that isn't caught, or if some engineer or producer's fucking around doing something else, that becomes difficult, you know. So we work with Nick Launay because he knows about that and he's always just on it. So it gets difficult if people don't understand the process, I would say. I get difficult. But if everything's working in the way that it should, you know, I'm a pussycat in the studio, you know. I mean, I find it these days so enjoyable to record, so enjoyable to go into the studio with a bunch of musicians who I know and trust and love and record stuff. There's nothing quite like it, mostly because I'm involved in other sorts of things like script writing, like Hollywood, all of this sort of stuff, which is just, which is anything but pleasurable. You know, it's just like, it's just politics and stuff, you know. But recording a record, it's you know, there's nothing quite like it.
Pussycat. And as a husband?
What am I like as a husband?
Yeah.
I don't know. I'm all right.
Was it really love?
C minus.
C minus? Well, fair enough.
Yeah.
Was it love at first sight meeting your now wife?
Yeah, it
you?
was actually, yeah. Is that all right?
Well,
that's my wife out there with a little siren. Oh, no one's going to hear what I say anyway, because there'll be over the top of me talking.
We will.
Oh, cool.
Hear you, but
Yeah, a little bit of me starting,
a German voice as well.
and then a German voice comes over the top.
Yeah. Right.
Oh, good.
more as a
So I can
summary.
speak in any way I like,
Yeah. Sure.
like really high and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. My wife. Okay, so no. Anyway.
It's okay.
Yep,
We can-
läuft. Okay.
Yeah.
So it was love at first sight.
Oh, with my wife?
Yeah.
Oh, look, yeah, it was actually. It was, yeah.
Do you think
Yeah.
that she...
I mean, I was sort of. Yeah.
Did she change you in a way? Do you have the feeling that she did? In a good way, maybe?
Did she change me? I don't know if we ever really change. She may have sort of pointed me, you know, in a direction that was probably, yeah. I mean, no one can change anybody, you know. I don't think. We're just the way we are, really. But she had a very positive influence over things, you know.
And how are you doing as a father then? Are you pointing your sons in a way?
Well, yeah, I don't know. I'm all right. You know, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, I don't kind of run around and tell them what to do, and I'm pretty easygoing about things. I'm all, yeah, I don't know. We watch a lot of shit in the TV. You know, I just do what I'm supposed to do. You know, I do a lot of it. I really like spending time with my kids. whether I'm a benefit to them, you know, whether I'm moving them in the right direction, or I'm not so concerned with that. I love them very much. They know that I love them. But I don't know if I see it as my role, or I don't see it as any parent's role to be influencing the course of, or influence the thinking of their children. I think if parents stood back a little bit and allowed their children to develop, would probably be better for the children. That we should be able to trust them a little bit more. So I don't try and, you know, I don't know.
So
I'm just probably speaking a whole lot of shit. You can edit it. I mean, I don't know. Getting advice from me is like being measured by the undertaker or something.
Wow. Now, to sum it up, would you say that you're a happy man, as it is now?
I'm okay, yeah.
As happy as never before, or just okay happy?
Look, I've been happy, you know, in many times in my life.
In different ways.
You know, it's like anything. I mean, I don't know anyone's happy. You know, happiness is something that, you know, joy is something that we experience occasionally. It's these little lifts of the heart that happen at the most strangest times, that catch us unawares, that happen when there's just a moment of interaction with another person that can make you, you know, that can lift the heart slightly. Am I happy all the time? No, I'm not happy all the time. I don't know anybody who's happy. I wouldn't trust anyone that was happy all the time, you know. My life seems to be, I can do what I want to do in my life easier these days than perhaps before.
Right.
There weren't as many obstacles. But you know, I was happy as a kid, you know, like I was saying. You know, that kind of pleasure comes from having sort of freedom to do what you want in your life, and at the moment I have that freedom. I don't feel I'm doing a lot of stuff I don't want to do, so that's good. That's good.
Well, I really enjoyed talking to you. It was like being measured by the Undertaker for 1 hour.
All right.
That was fun. Thank you very much, Nick.
Okay.